Assalamu alaikum class. Now we are going to continue with the same question. In the first part we had passed adjusting entries in the previous video, and in this video we are going to prepare 10 columns worksheet. As you can see the question, this is same question number 2. So let's start with the worksheet. Trial balance is already given to you in question. So when we are talking about worksheet, so in case of worksheet we have this format as you can see on the screen, and we have to prepare 10 columns worksheet. So that's why we have to discuss 5 major columns here, that is of trial balance. After that we have to generate column of adjustments. After that we generated column of adjusted trial balance, then income statement, and the final column is of balance sheet. So format is already visible to you. On the top of worksheet you have to write name of organization or corporation. After that you will write worksheet, because this is worksheet format, and if the date is mentioned to you, so you will also write for the year ended on 30th June. So these were the 5 major columns, and these items, as you can see on the screen, these items are taken from trial balance, and there are some items which are taken from adjustments. We have taken certain items from adjustments. So let me increase the size so that it can be more prominently visible to all of you. Okay, now you can see clearly these items are taken from trial balance. You can see the trial balance here. All these items are available to you on debit side as well as on credit side. Different items are given to you. So I have taken all these items from the trial balance. Now what we have to do in worksheet. We have to write all these items one by one: cash, account receivable, account payable, capital, drawings, revenue collected, taxes paid, electricity expenses, sundry expenses, advertisement, furniture, taxes payable. So these were basically the trial balance items. So we are going to put values here. As you can see in the question, what is the value of cash? The value of cash is 45,000. So what we'll do here, we'll also write 45,000 on debit side. Why on debit side? Because in question cash is given on debit side, and normally according to the rules, if you study the rules of debit and credit, so it tells you that assets are normally recorded on the debit side. Then we have account receivable, which is rupees 20,000, again on debit side. Then we have account payable 15,000, but on credit side. You can also see here from trial balance that accounts payable is mentioned on, you can see here accounts payable is mentioned on credit side. So that's why in worksheet we have also written it on credit side. Then we have capital of 75,000, and then we have drawings of 8,000 on debit side. Then we have revenue collected of 95,000 on credit side. All these values I am taking from trial balance, so there is nothing to confuse about. Taxes paid 4,000 on debit side. Then we have electricity expenses 12,000 on debit side. Then we have sundry expenses of 25,000 on debit side. Then we have advertisement expenses of 55,000 on debit side, and then we have a furniture of 16,000 on debit side. Okay, these were the items that were mentioned to you in trial balance, and I have written these items. As you can see, both the debit and credit side is balanced. These items have been taken from trial balance, 185,000 rupees. You can also see the question here, 185,000 rupees, because all these items have been taken from this trial balance. So that's why even in worksheet we have the same value of 185,000 under the column, in the column of trial balance. So you can see all these values have been taken from trial balance of the question. Now the next column is of adjustments. So for this sake, we have to write those items which we have included in case of adjustments. So we will see that what items were included in case of adjustments. Here, tax expense and tax payable. So we'll check out here tax expenses and tax payable. Tax expenses is also already given in trial balance, so there is no need to repeat it again here. Taxes paid is already given in trial balance, so we will not write it again down here. Then we have taxes payable. Taxes payable is not given in trial balance, so that's why we have to mention it here down. Taxes payable. This taxes payable figure item is taken from adjustments, so I have written taxes payable here. Now again we will move towards adjusting entries. We have revenue receivable and revenue earned. Again we will see in worksheet, revenue receivable is not given in trial balance. You can see revenue receivable is not given in trial balance, so that's why we will write it here down separately, revenue receivable. But revenue earned or revenue collected is already mentioned in trial balance, so there is no need to repeat it again and write it again down here. That's why we will just write revenue receivable. After that, in adjusting entries, we have depreciation expense and accumulated depreciation. Depreciation expense is not given in trial balance, so we have to write it down in adjustments. Like this item is an additional item which is taken from adjustments, and accumulated depreciation item is also not given in trial balance, so we'll write here down accumulated depreciation in the list of items. Then in adjusting entries, what items are left? Bad debt expense and allowance for bad debts. So we'll check here that is there any bad debt expense in trial balance? So there's no bad debt expense in trial balance, so that's why we have written bad debt expense in the last of the items list. And reserve for bad debts was also not given in trial balance, so that's why we have also written it in the items list. Now what about the values? These are the items that we have taken from adjustments. Now we have to fill the adjustments column with the figures with the values as well. So now let's start with the adjusting entries. We will one by one check out all the adjusting entries and we'll put values. Tax expense is debit with 2500 and tax payable is credit with 2500. So tax expense is debit with 2500. We have written it on debit side, and tax payable is credit with 2500, so we have written it here. Then what is the next adjusting entry? Revenue receivable is debit 15,000 and revenue collected or earned is credit 15,000. So revenue receivable is debit 15,000 and revenue earned or revenue collected is credit with 15,000. Then moving towards third adjustment. Third adjustment is depreciation expense and accumulated depreciation, 800 and 800 debit credit. So depreciation expense and accumulated depreciation both are given here. So we'll write the amounts. What is the amount? 800 rupees. So we'll write here depreciation expense debit with 800 and accumulated depreciation is credit with 800 rupees. Now what adjusting entry is left? Bad debt expense and allowance for bad debts. So bad debt expense is debit with 300 and allowance for bad debts is credit with 300. Both are given in the end, so that's why we'll write here bad debt expense is debit with 300 and allowance for bad debts is credit with 300. Now you can see that the adjustments column is also balanced. When you add up all the debit side items figures and you add up all the credit side items of figures, so you are getting 18,600 rupees. Both sides are equal. It means that your adjustments column is also accurate. Now moving towards the third column, that is of adjusted trial balance. How this column is generated? Now let's see. I have just put formula in this worksheet, so that's why automatically these values are generated. But when you are going to solve this question, you have to do this calculation by yourself. You can see that cash amount is debit with 45,000. So, and no other work is done here in these columns, so that's why debit this cash amount would be written as it is in the adjusted trial balance column, which is 45,000 rupees. Then account receivable is 20,000. It will also be written as it is in the adjusted trial balance column, because no working is done in the other columns, in the respective columns. Then moving towards accounts payable, which is 15,000 on credit side, it will come as it is in adjusted trial balance on credit side. Then we have capital 75,000 in trial balance on credit side, so it will also be written on credit side in adjusted trial balance, because no other working is done in the other columns in the adjustments column. And then we have drawings. Drawings will also come as it is in adjusted trial balance. Then we have revenue collected or revenue earned, which is 95,000 on credit side in trial balance and 15,000 on credit side in adjustment. So credit side and credit side, it means that you have to add up these two values. You will get 110,000 means 1,10,000 rupees, but you will write it on the credit side, because this figure is on credit side as well as in adjustments the figure is again on credit side. So credit means you will mention it on credit side. Then we have taxes paid or tax expense, which was 4,000 rupees on debit side in trial balance, and in adjustments it was 2,500 rupees on debit sides. So debit side and debit side, it means that you have to add up these two values. You will get 6,500 rupees. Again, you have to mention it on debit side in adjusted trial balance. Then we have electricity expenses. These expenses will also come as it is, as no working is done in adjustments column. Then we have sundry expenses and advertisement expenses and furniture. These three values will also come as it is, because no working is done in adjustments. Then taxes payable, which is rupees 2,500. So it will also come as it is in adjusted trial balance, because no working is done other than this value. And then we have revenue receivable of 15,000 also come as it is. Then we have depreciation expenses and accumulated depreciation. These figures will also come as it is. And then bad debts expense and reserve for bad debts will also come as it is in adjusted trial balance. So you can see, when you add up all the debit side values, you will get 23,600, and when you add up all the items, all the figures of credit side, again you will get 2,03,600 rupees. So you can see that both the debit and credit side is balanced in adjusted trial balance, which means that our adjusted trial balance is also accurate up till now. After that, we have to prepare income statement and balance sheet. So in income statement, we'll write only those items, we'll write the values of only those items that belong to income statement. So cash belongs to balance sheet, so we have skipped it. Account receivable is also skipped, accounts payable is also skipped, capital is also, drawings is also. Then revenue earned or received is actually income statement item, and in income statement we have to mention it on credit side, because it's a credit side item. Then taxes paid means tax expense is also income statement item, that's why we have mentioned it. We have taken the value from adjusted trial balance. Then electricity expense, sundry expenses, advertisement, these are also income statement items, so that's why we have taken these figures from adjusted trial balance and have written it in income statement. Then furniture is balance sheet item, so we have skipped it. Then taxes payable is also balance sheet item, we have skipped it. Revenue receivable is also balance sheet item, that's why we have skipped it. Then we have depreciation expense is income statement item, we have mentioned it on debit side. Then accumulated depreciation is a balance sheet item, that's why we have skipped it. Bad debt expense is income statement item, so we have written it here on debit side. And then reserve for bad debts is balance sheet item, that's why we have skipped it. Now you can see the total values. When we add up all the values of our debit side, we will get 99,600 rupees, and when you add up all the values of credit side, you will get 1,10,000 rupees. But you can see that a difference of values is coming here. There is difference of values, and the difference is of 10,400 rupees. If you subtract 1,10,000, if you subtract 99,600 from 1,10,000, so you will get a difference of 10,400 rupees. Now where should we mention this difference of 10,400 rupees, which is basically our income, net income? because in income statement column the difference is basically your net income or your net loss. So this is the case of our net income because credit side is greater than debit side. So this is the case of our profit, or we can say that this is the case of our net income. So where should we mention net income so that both the sides may get balanced? So the common sense says that you should mention the difference amount, that is 10,400 rupees, on the debit side, so that both the debit and credit side may get balanced. Now you can see that when I have added a value of 10,400 rupees in the row of net income, so both the debit and credit sides of income statement are balanced. So now what we will do, this column, income statement column, is balanced. Now we have to move towards the balance sheet item column, and in balance sheet column we'll write or mention only those figures or values which belong to balance sheet. So cash belongs to balance sheet, that's why we have taken 45,000 rupees from adjusted trial balance. Account receivable is also balance sheet item, so we have taken this figure from adjusted trial balance. Accounts payable is a balance sheet item, but on credit side we have mentioned this value. Capital is also balance sheet item, on credit side we have mentioned it. Then drawings is also balance sheet item, but on debit side, and we are taking these values from adjusted trial balance. Then furniture is a balance sheet item, we have mentioned it on debit side. Taxes payable liability, liability also belongs to balance sheet, that's why we have mentioned it on credit side. Then we have a revenue receivable. Receivable means account receivable, so again it's an asset, and that's why asset belongs to balance sheet and on debit side. Then we have accumulated depreciation. Accumulated depreciation would be written on credit side, because you can see that in adjusted trial balance accumulated depreciation is mentioned on credit side. And then we have reserve for bad debts. Reserve for bad debts is also mentioned on credit side in adjusted trial balance, that's why in balance sheet we'll mention reserve for bad debts on credit side. And reserve for bad debts is basically an item that belongs to balance sheet, because if you see the balance sheet, if you see the statement, so in balance sheet usually we subtract reserve for bad debts from account receivable, so that's why we have mentioned reserve on the credit side in balance sheet. In the last we have net income, and net income would be mentioned on the credit side, because net income belongs to capital side, owner equity side, that's why we have mentioned it on credit side. Now when you add all the items of debit side, all the values of debit side, you will get 1,04,000 rupees, and on credit side again you will get 1,04,000 rupees. So you can see that balance sheet is also balanced, both the sides are balanced. So this is basically our worksheet, which is said to be 10 columns worksheet. As you can see, there are 10 columns in this worksheet, and we have 5 major columns, 5 major headings that create 10 columns worksheet. And hopefully now it would be much clear to you, this concept would be much clear to you. This is very easy concept. What you have to do is that you have to get cleared about the concept of adjustments, and you have to get cleared about the concepts of debit and credit, that which item should be mentioned on debit side and which item should be mentioned on credit side. That's all class, thank you.